I want to talk about today why it's so bad spiritually to judge people. Now, there are two types of judgment, I think. So, I think there's a wise type of judgment, which is like self-preservation, um, out of wisdom. So, for example, you can discern a spirit in someone. You can tell that, someone is giving strange vibes. Maybe, he could be trying to manipulate you. They could be trying to use you in some way. They might be jealous of you. Um, they're giving you strange vibes. And because of that, then you cease to associate with them, or you just kind of like keep your distance away from, like, they're affecting you somehow. And it's wise to stay away from someone like that because Satan might be using them just as God uses people as well. And so that's good judgment, like staying away or like using your discernment to stay on, keep with your relationship with God, to stay on the narrow path, the walk with God, stay on that path, because relationships probably one of the biggest things that Satan uses to, take you out of your purpose, take you away from your relationship with God. But the other type of judgment, which we shouldn't do, is judging out of self-righteousness and condemnation. And I'm learning, if I don't stay sober-minded, if I don't control my mind, then I can inevitably fall into that as well. I'm not saying that we all have to be perfect. Like, obviously, we all are sinners. We can, we fall short if we don't notice. But it's a standard we should always be seeking to improve. And the standard is just not judging people because you think you're better than them. Or it's like, oh, I'm so glad I'm not doing this. When you see someone doing something, it might even be a bad thing. Like, it might even be like, oh, I'm so glad I'm not, you know, doing something self-destructive, sinning against God. But even then, you shouldn't judge people because we are all prone to sinning against God. We are all prone to doing that exact thing that you are judging them against. And I think God is such a comedian because every time I've noticed I've judged something or someone and I've done it out of arrogance and, self-righteousness, later on, he always makes me do the same thing. And then when I'm doing that wrong thing, he like reminds me about the time where I judged that guy. And then I'm like, oh shoot, man, like I got convicted. God, you are right, and I'm sorry. And so that's why we shouldn't judge others based out of our own self-righteousness. Because God doesn't like that as well. God literally, like, the thing that one of the things God hates the most is our hypocrites. You know how Jesus is always like to the Pharisees, oh, you hypocrites, you hypocrites. And I think it's fair enough because firstly that it's so intuitive, like, because humans don't like hypocrites either. Everyone knows that. Even evil people, or like just anyone, like people don't like hypocrites. But I think it's also because hypocrites don't live up to their own self-standard, and therefore they are losing their self-respect. Like they are not living up to their own standard, and so therefore they are disrespecting themselves. And if someone disrespects themselves, then other people will naturally follow, because in life it's all about you deciding who you want to be in this life, and then people will bend to that reality. So if you're disrespecting yourself, if you're lowering your self-respect, then other people will disrespect you as well. Other people won't, you know, take your words seriously. They won't take you seriously because you're a hypocrite. And the same thing with God. He won't take you seriously as well. And so I just think that's why we shouldn't judge. And obviously it's such a common thing in kind of Christianity and the Bible, how everyone's like, oh, don't judge, don't judge. It's such a, you know, it's such a mainstream concept. But I think so many things in Christianity, it's like, well, the Bible says that, but is it really true? Like, how does it, as in, can I prove this truth in the Bible based on real life experience? Because that is what real truth is. And I just want to I was just wanting to talk about the real life experience that proves why we shouldn't judge. Because the thing is about judging is it's so risky. It's such a fine lining. Because if you don't want to, you know, be a hypocrite, and then you judge other people, eventually, because we're all human, eventually you're probably going to do the very thing that you judged another person to do. And therefore, in God's eyes, you're a hypocrite. And then, yeah, that's not good. And so that's why we shouldn't judge people, because you are just as prone to making the same mistake. If you're judging a mistake, you're just as prone to making the same mistake. And another way to think about it is, maybe if you were in their shoes, if you had their experiences, if you know, went through what they went through, you would probably be doing the same thing. You know, there are so many things that people take for granted that have given them an advantage in life, and people can't see those advantages. And so it's so easy to like hate on other people, but they never had the advantage you had. And if you didn't have that advantage, maybe you would be even worse off than them. So that is what I wanted to talk about today.